is a man, they say, who above all others is considered a giant of history. For it was he who saw a need for greatness and chose to fill that void with his own epic figure. He is Craig Baird, owner, operator, and ruler of Dead on You Studios. This is his story. Born on June 17, 1978, Craig Baird was the product of a union between an outlaw Kentucky whiskey brewer and Aphrodite, Queen of the Nile. From this union, 5 months later, Craig was born as 7 rainbows appeared on the hillside of Mount Excelsior, renamed Everest in 1997. Baird had a typical childhood of running from the law with his father as they brewed what was then termed the best Kentucky hooch this side of Spain. Those early years in his life were a carefree time where he learned about the world through the teaching of his father, Jebediah. Let's have Jebediah himself tell us about Craig's early years. This historic recording was made in 1989, 2 years before his death, as his son was tried for crimes against humanity as the juvenile warlord over Milwaukee. Craig was a strange child. He would wander off for hours and come back covered in honey, stark-ass naked. When I asked him what he was doing, he would just say he was teaching some immigrants how the West was won. I never did understand what he was talking about. I used to teach him about the math and the science as best I knew. The earth moves around the sun moves around the moon, and everything is only 200 years old. When I would teach him the math, I would use our whiskey jars. I would start by having 5 whiskey jars in front of me. Then I would say, here are 5 jars. Then I would drink 2 of the jars and usually forget what I was doing there. More often than not, I would yell at him for leaving me only 3 jars of whiskey, and then I'd berate him until he told me where the other 2 went. That was our life until, the incident. The incident, as Jebediah would go on to explain, occurred on March 3rd, 1986, when Baird was only 8 years old. It was on that fateful day that he wandered into the city of Milwaukee during one of his father's many benders, stole a police car, and drove it into City Hall. Once part 1 of what he would later call the plan was complete, he immediately seized control of the mayor's office through the use of a shotgun procured from the police vehicle. Still unable to read or write, Craig Baird had seized control of a large city, and for the next 3 years, Milwaukee lived under his brutal reign of terror. Through exhaustive research, we have been able to successfully find a news report from April 9th, 1988, to give a glimpse into this dark time in Milwaukee's history. And in other news, dictator for life and supreme skateboard god Craig Baird has decreed that there will be an immediate ban on all movies and television shows starring Chevy Chase. Under this new law, any showing of media involving Chevy Chase will result in an immediate decapitation. In addition, anyone named Chevy or with the last name Chase will have to change their names to either Dudley or their last name to Silkwater Scumtree. There is also an open hunting license for anyone who wishes to lure Chevy Chase to the city for the purpose of trapping him and using his skin to decorate the entrance of Craig Baird's mansion. During Craig's rule of Milwaukee, he declared martial law, outlawed pizza and most other ethnic foods, changed the name of Christmas to Buttmas and insisted that instead of presents, everyone had to smack each other's bums, and during one dark period, he tried to replace the power plant in town with a giant hamster wheel run by elephants. Eventually, with nothing better to do at the time, the United States government got involved and sent in the National Guard in 1989, 3 years after Craig took control of the town. Upon his capture and arrest, Baird was taken to the International Court, where he was charged with crimes against humanity. Thankfully, after several months, the court decided that since it was only Milwaukee, America's loser city, no real harm was done, and Baird was released. From 1989 to 1999, Baird lived off the land in the Appalachian Mountains, where he spent most of his time hallucinating thanks to a steady diet of forest mushrooms. All that is known of Baird comes from the Vanderbilt News, the newspaper in the closest town to where Craig lived. During those 10 years, he became so well known for his oddball escapades in the town that the newspaper began printing a "What Did Baird Do" feature in its weekly editions. We have compiled several of these to get a glimpse into the mind of this madman genius we know and love.
May 4th, 1995. Craig Baird once again returned to town. This time around, he carried with him both a Bible and a Koran. In a makeshift wrestling ring, Baird urged the two religious texts to fight out the differences and move on. While witnesses observed neither of the books to have moved, Baird insisted it was an intense fight and a lot of important things were said. September 19th, 1996. Craig Baird walked into town and walked out with the town's entire supply of shopping trolleys. They were found 4 days later in a lake with various pornographic magazines taped to them. December 25th, 1996. Residents woke up to find that once again, Craig Baird had broken into their homes and stolen the presents under the tree. In a repeat of last year, it is expected that he will once again demand a ransom for the presents, except for the plush animals which he burned in a mass grave. April 21st, 1998. Craig Baird came to town with his family again last week. According to witnesses, he got into a loud argument with his wife, which was nothing more than a block of wood with a picture of Eric Roberts and Eleanor Roosevelt taped to it. Following the argument, Baird and his wife made up physically in full view of patrons at the local Pizza Hut. October 31st, 1998. Parents were urged to not let their children out trick-or-treating again this year for fear of another repeat of the incidents last year involving Craig Baird and several armed robberies of candy. Police were baffled last year when piles of candy turned up in the forest with pornographic magazines taped to them. No candy was eaten. This year, parents are urged to stay home and just, in the words of the police department, not give that weirdo any attention. June 30th, 1999. Craig Baird traveled into town again and told everyone he was leaving to once again join NASA and save the world from an asteroid. Upon leaving town, residents learned that he had put several bottles of urine above doors at the houses of certain residents in town.
This would prove to be the final time that Craig Baird would ever grace the town. But to this day, the town has outlawed the name Craig, and anyone with the last name Baird is quietly taken out to the forest and shot. Or at the very least, pistol whipped. Beginning in 2000 with a new zest for life, Baird set about starting up his own media studio. Using the money that he had stolen from the homes in Vanderbilt over the course of 10 years, Baird had a sizable fortune of over $3 million at his disposal. Purchasing an old abandoned asbestos factory, Baird set about creating You've Got Dead on You Studios. Baird's first internet show centered around a racist monkey. Called by Time magazine as brilliantly lampooning the issue of race in our world, it earned Craig many accolades and even the honor of being the 2000 Person of the Year for Time magazine. What no one knew at the time was that the show was not lampooning racism, but was in fact a celebration of it. When word of this got out, the show was swiftly cancelled. In 2003, Baird created the show Professor Huffernuffin and the Telltale Heart of Forgetful Bites. Recruiting, and some say kidnapping, up-and-coming actor Jason Hall, who is about to star as Michael Bluth in the hit show Arrested Development, the show was an immediate bomb and was cancelled from the internet after only 3 broadcasts. Instead of being able to leave and take the role that would make Jason Bateman a star, Jason Hall was drugged and held captive in one of the 7 dungeons at the studio property. For the next 2 years, Baird spent his time writing manifestos that he would often mail to the scouts and girl guides in the area, while taunting Jason, his only friend, in the dungeon built especially for the once up-and-coming actor. It was in 2005 that Baird found his soulmate in Layla, one of the well-known Gothic princesses that populated the area. Upon meeting Baird and initially being repulsed by him until she learned of his fortune, Layla agreed to marry him and soon took control of the struggling studio. Their marriage proved to be a happy one, with Baird often sporting love bruises from Layla, typically around his ribs. In 2006, Baird was ready to begin a new show, one that would change the world. To find the talent, he traveled across the globe. Along the way, he recruited well-known children's singer Faith Witherow, homeless poet Audie Mitron, and retired goon Knuckles. The core of the future Dead on You staff was nearly complete. All that was needed was the announcer. Walking into a German bar in 2008, he heard a man singing his heart out to a crowd that was less than friendly. That man was me, the announcer. As soon as Baird met the announcer, he hired me on the spot. 2 hours later, after waking up from the ether, I was on my way to America, in a small box labeled Fragile. With all of the pieces of the puzzle in place, Baird could finally create the iconic show that he became known for. You've got Dead on You. Craig Baird, the only writer, got to work making a show about the struggles of friendship in a zombie apocalypse. Debuting in April of 2010, it would go on to become the most popular podcast in history, with downloads reaching 2 billion in only 3 months, according to the estimates of Craig himself. For the next 2 seasons, Baird, usually in a drunken haze or high on gas fumes, pumped out 50 episodes of the show. Today, it has grown into a huge enterprise, employing thousands of staff around the world, mostly in sweatshops, and bringing in untold millions that Craig one day promises to maybe give to the rest of the cast. Maybe. From those small beginnings as a backwoods whiskey brewer with his father, to the ruler of some loser city, to a mushroom-eating lunatic, to today, Baird has fulfilled his promise to one day become the greatest human in history. Truly, and these are his own words, he is the King of Kings.